Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the all-inclusive Mega Man X Retrospective. This time we're looking at our third and final Mega Man X spin-off that was released in 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and Nintendo Gamecube, that being the JRPG, Mega Man X Command Mission. So yeah, for the first time in the retrospective, we're not looking at a platformer with 8 bosses, weapons, weaknesses, castle stages, the works. Hence why the title is the way it is. Since it should be stated that I've never finished X Command Mission before doing this review. I've owned it and played it, but never got further than the second chapter, which isn't saying too terribly much all things considered. So, after beating the game, we're here to see if this truly is the breath of fresh air this series needed after X5, X6, and X7, or is it just another crappy X game to add to the list? Also, just as a note, if you don't know, this is the 10th in a video series on Mega Man X. If you haven't seen them, it comes recommended. However, outside of story, there probably will be next to no quality comparisons between this game and the rest of the series, since of course it's an entirely different genre. I figured I'd say that now, given how heavily I've compared these games to one another in the videos. How I'll be judging X Command Mission is how it serves as an entrance to JRPG design philosophy, since if a game makes me hate the concept of random battles or grinding, then I'd say it fails as a JRPG anyone can get into. And if I get used to them and enjoy the battle system, then it succeeds. Got it? Good. As a result, this will be one of my most in-depth reviews in the X Retrospective, more of a standard review than an in-depth analysis. I just want to make that clear from the start. So let's get this out of the way now. I am in no way a fan of RPGs. The concept of grinding and random battles has always left me uninterested in the genre, since that's not the skill curve that made me a gamer in the first place. Mastering the toolbox given to you and the game being easier as a result is what I grew up on, and is what I like to see most in games. Not that I'm against anything different from that, but still. I know all RPGs aren't what I just said, but what I'm saying is that I find the concept of randomized battles and turn-based battles at that to be a deterrent for me in the genre. Probably doesn't help that the only RPGs I've ever played are this and Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood for the DS. Yeah, moving on. In other words, the only reason I even have this game is because Mega Man X is in the title. I really wouldn't give a damn otherwise. This was also the last X game I ever played, since I played the first 5 in January of 2015, then played the Extreme series in X6 through 8 in spring of 2015, and didn't get around to this game until September of 2015. From there I played it for a few minutes and I just put it down. But I really didn't like what I was playing at the time, so I just stopped. And from there I played it every now and again, got to chapter 2 right before I decided to do this video series, and figured I'd save it until now. And so here we are. Just going to issue a minor spoiler warning before we get started, since I know hardly anyone has played this, but since it's an RPG with many things to talk about in regards to story, I figured a warning would be in place. Our story begins in the year 22XX. Wait, what? Okay, I'll save that for later. A new material called Force Metal has been discovered, and a city called Giga City has been designed around this new material. And with that, rebellion has arrived, with this new group attempting to use Supra Force Metal to their advantage to conquer Giga City. X and Zero have arrived at the city alongside a new partner, Shadow, as they come through in the basement. They get separated for a bit, but they get reunited and come in contact with our main villain, Epsilon, who's running the rebellion. And with that said, we get an introduction to our gang of villains. And am I the only one who's reminded of the part in Snake Eater where Snake encounters all the Cobras and they use all their powers as he gets his ass kicked? Well, that's what happens here as X and Zero get separated. And this is when the story gets way more interesting, as X is found by the Resistance. And no, I don't mean the Rebellion Army, I mean the Resistance Army of the Rebellion Army. I know, it doesn't really make too much sense. But anyway, X is all on his own now as he has to interact with an entirely new cast of characters since Zero is gone, and I don't know where Axel is at this moment, and the Maverick Hunters like Alia, Cygnus, and the others are not in this game. Instead, the leader of the Maverick Hunters is Colonel Redops, although he really doesn't do anything. So that's why I find this story to be pretty interesting, since like I said, we have new characters to work with. One of them being this Gambit wannabe called Spider, who's a bounty hunter coming after X. But since Spider's friend, who was a part of the Resistance before dying, gave X the A-OK, Spider decides he wants to help X stop the Rebellion Army. In addition to getting help from Chief R, who's the Cygnus of this game, leading the Resistance. Also, there's this tech support lady who kinda reminds me of the one in Maverick Hunter X. I mean, are these the same characters? I'm not entirely sure, I'll let you decide on that one. Anyway, X and Spider continue on and meet new citizens of Giga City who have their own backstories and missions, such as Massimo, who got all his armor from a friend who got captured and tortured by the Rebellion Army. Or Marino, who's a thief who joins with X and company to stop the army since they're after the same thing that she is. That being the Force Metal generator, Cinnamon, who also joins the party but is most certainly not the strongest fighter. Her, I guess, father also helps out on the technical side of things, so that's all fine and good. I say all these things now because these characters only really exist to flesh out Giga City and show more of what its citizens are like, since it is an RPG after all. Characters have to be far more fleshed out than, say, the citizens of Doppler Town or something. Overall, though, these characters really don't add to the larger narrative outside of their first appearance. I do think they're likable characters, which is good, but really this story is about X, Spider, Zero, and Axel. Speaking of which, X and friends track down Zero, but along the way find Axel, who was in Giga City since he's looking for leads and who created him. And he's still looking for that even though X7 happened 100 years ago at this point. Great fucking continuity, right guys? Anyway, when X and Zero are reunited, Zero doesn't trust any of X's friends since, well, they're from Giga City. And I really like this moment since Zero is rightfully opposed to working with anyone new since they got betrayed by Shadow, and now X is to prove to him that his new friends are just as valuable as X or Axel are to Zero, which Spider does by saving Zero from Shadow before they kill him once and for all. To which they battle the villain of that chapter, but before leaving, Spider sacrifices himself in a scene that's always been kinda weird to me since it seems really rushed and we don't actually see anything, the screen just fades to white. But we don't have time for that since now X and company find out that the Rebellion Army has a nuclear missile that they're powering with Super Force metal. And now we need to shut that down, which pretty much takes us to the ending where X beats Epsilon and that ends the Rebellion Army. I mean, it takes over 3 hours to get from the missile to Epsilon, but still, not many things happen that affect the overall narrative, just a lot of smaller character moments. X gives Colonel Redops the Super Force medal, and then all hell breaks loose as there was a secret villain the whole time. Alright, Sigma, just come on out and get this shit over with. Wait. Colonel Redops is the secret main villain? And not Sigma? Oh my god! It took them 10 fucking games to decide that maybe Sigma's the secret villain routine is getting old. I mean, it shouldn't have taken this long, but I am glad that we finally have an X story where Sigma does not appear and is not even mentioned one time. Thank the Lord. Although another dramatic reveal is that Colonel Redops reveals that he was Spider all along and was faking the whole time. This actually really caught me off guard, even though I should have seen it coming. I mean, Spider, Redops. I mean, did they want you to know this twist was coming ahead of time? It was also pretty impactful since I thought Spider was such a great character and I would have loved to see him come back, but he's the main villain in this game, so we're just gonna have to take him down. But before we can do that, it goes to outer space, and that's when we finally kill Redops and save Giga City from annihilation at the hands of the Rebellion Army. However, my biggest issue with the story comes here. After our heroes save the day, the game ends. That is literally it. The game just fades to credits. We don't see them say goodbye to their new friends or mourn for Chief R, who got killed by Redops just now. We don't see a resolution of the arcs of the characters. Literally, nothing happens in the ending. Why? They had so much build up to a climax where nothing happens, making the whole game really pointless, since the characters didn't go anywhere. And since Spider betrayed X and they used the real superpower of teamwork to defeat him, that means Zero didn't get proven wrong for his initial attitude against these people since he was right the whole time. Spider was evil. And this never gets addressed at all. If the story had some resolution, it would be more acceptable, but since it just ends, I really don't know what the point was. Also, is this game canon or not? Seriously, I don't know the answer to that. And that really wouldn't matter at all, right? But the problem is, this game decided to set itself in 22XX. 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 That one fucking detail wrecks the whole thing, since you know what games are supposed to take place here? The goddamn Zero games! I guess this means that if X Command Mission is canon, then the Zero games are pushed back another 100 years. But what the fuck kind of storytelling is this? However, if you subscribe to the idea that X7 is another timeline after X's good ending in X6, then I guess it works, but seriously, the fact that the stories in the post-X6X games are such a self-contradicting mess is a big problem. In an interview for X Command Mission, that was when Inafune said the X6 Zero ending is after the whole X series is done. But the reason I didn't think much of it last time was because it seriously does not have any evidence in the actual game, which is supposed to give me all the info I need, for Christ's sake. And just a tiny continuity problem. The currency in the game to buy items is Zenny, which is a neat reference to the Mega Man Legends series. However, the currency in Mega Man X8 was energy crystals, and the currency in the Mega Man Zero and ZX games was energy crystals. So in the world, the currency evidently went from bolts to energy crystals to Zenny, back to energy crystals, then back to Zenny? This is so fucked. Thank God this is the last time I have to rant about the crappy continuity, since I got most of it out of my system in X7. So that covers the story of X Command Mission. I think the plot itself is well built up and has great characters and interactions all throughout. However, the shitty continuity and overall lack of a point because of how the game just ends leave me feeling like I spent 20 hours in this game for no reason. Although I think we should just move on for now. In regards to the presentation, Mega Man X Command Mission is the first game to use the Maverick Hunter X voice cast, or pretty much just Mark Gartha as X and Lucas Gilbertson as Zero, who are both my favorite interpretations of X and Zero by far. Although, to be fair, there isn't too much competition for that. I feel like X7's X had the right voice, but the direction was just awful, making him seem worse than he actually was. But if I'm playing the Mega Man Zero games, I'm reading X and Zero's texts in these voices. Other than that, I think the cast of X Command Mission does a decent job, like Spider or Marno, and Axel especially is an improvement, capturing the character's more playful attitude, all the while still pulling his weight when needed. So I'd give Axel's character an A+ in this game, which is more than what I can say for X7. I didn't talk too much about the villains in this game, since they really only exist to be bosses to be beaten, but I do think they're all pretty well characterized, but not too terribly deep beyond that. In regards to the soundtrack of X Command Mission, there really isn't too much to say. It's catchy when listening to it while you're playing, but most of the time it's probably not something you'd listen to outside of the game. But I really do love the themes of X and Zero, since X's theme is incredibly triumphant, especially when it plays during a boss battle. You really feel like you're overcoming some intense odds. Zero's theme kicks in whenever Zero arrives at the last moment to save the day when X and company are in a tricky situation, and when he arrives with all his power, you can really feel the battle tipping in your favor, and the theme captures that quite well. Also, I just figured I would mention this. The theme of Chapter 1 is ripped straight out of a cutscene from Mega Man X7.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. This is the reason I ran away from Red Alert.
No relevance to me saying that, I just wanted to say it. The graphics in X Command Mission are 50-50. I said I love the character models of X7, and X Command Mission continues the same cel-shaded art style that I loved in that game. And hell, the cutscene animation is way better than X7 since the characters actually animate this time around, with lips actually moving. Like seriously, X7, how did you drop the ball on that? Also, I would like to mention how X's new design looks really nice. I find it to be a refreshing change of pace since early teasers show X looking the same as he always does. However, the environments is where the graphics in X Command Mission fall flat. The game runs at a 480p resolution, but that doesn't save these bland areas. The game sees you running through hallway after hallway with minimal variety in every single chapter, which is especially noticeable when you're running through caves and tunnels. However, that only leaves us with the gameplay. And where do I begin? I mean, really, where do I begin? I guess to start, what I should mention is that this game has a ton of minor complexities to get your hands dirty with if you're into that sort of thing. For this review, I mainly want to focus on the battle system, boss battles, and the exploration, which is selling the game a tad bit short, so right now I'll mention the tinier details. Starting with the fact that in the areas you can find broken down mechanoids and recruit them to your side, and they can be sent to hunt for upgrades for you that you can't find in the areas yourself. One of them being a key to a hidden shop that has some really useful items like elemental attacks that do 1000 damage, and the ability to bring defeated party members back to 100% health. Which, trust me, I will get to. Also, that might just be the only thing in X Command Mission that slightly resembles a side quest. Yes, the only legit side quest might just be waiting in real time for these guys to get back from their mission to bring you stuff. What is this, Metal Gear Solid 5 where you have to wait for shit to be built in real time? Seriously, I hate that stuff. After some progress of the game, you find the treasure finder, which allows you to connect your GBA to the game to find treasure. In the GameCube version. I mean, I don't know what happens at this point in the PS2 version, but still. I do know that the PS2 version of X Command Mission comes with a demo of Mega Man X8, so that's nice, right? Since Force Metal is such a huge element of the story, it only makes sense to have it be a part of the game. So you can make and equip several types of Force Metal, such as extending your life, weapon energy, power, armor, speed, and the list goes on. However, it can't be done unlimitedly. You can only handle so much of this stuff, and with each level you go up by, the more Force Metals you can equip. Or else you have to deal with cut down health and battles from Force Metal Overload if you go over the max you can handle. So that brings us swimmingly into the core mechanics. In the exploration segments you play as X, with pretty much all of his abilities besides dashing gone, since X can't even jump. I mean, I'm not complaining, just more of an observation. These bits are really not that mechanically complex, so there isn't too much to say here. The actual level design of the areas is a major thing I really don't care for in X-Command Mission. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 are fine, since it was clear where to go at all times with some good pacing to them as you slowly grow your party. However, Chapter 4 is where I start to have a problem with almost every single chapter in the game. Chapter 4 is really where the repetitive level design starts to annoy the shit out of me, since every single room has one or two designs. This tube thing with the vast jungle on the other side of the glass, or these central elevator power-up rooms. It seriously starts to wear on you as you see the same repeated traps and set pieces, which describes my feelings on chapters 5 and 6 pretty well. Although they have another problem that I'll get into later. I think my least favorite stage in any Mega Man X game would have to be Chapter 7 of X-Command Mission. Seriously, I hate this chapter. We're told to follow the cords of whichever one of these poles has 100% power, but look at the atrocious visibility! I can literally see nothing for most of it. Also, this map is freaking awful. It displays boxes to represent floors, but never specifies your location on said floor. Why? Why couldn't it have been like Ocarina of Time with a 2D overhead map allowing me to cycle between floors to strengthen my spatial awareness? Instead, we get this, which is not a map. As if it couldn't get any worse, the solution to this maze is really stupid. How it works is that when finding this tower with 100%, you're supposed to walk a few feet from it in a certain direction, and then that triggers a cutscene. Like, what the hell? What was the point of bumbling around in the desert if it was resolved via story? Could have cut out the whole thing, and this would have been a better chapter for it. The mazes don't end there though, as X now has to travel through a cave maze, which is even more tedious since we already traveled through a cave in the last chapter, with that being followed by another puzzle where X has to go between floors and redirect lasers to open locks. And while that sounds really simple, and theoretically speaking it is, and the problem is, and there was no way I could talk about the pacing of X-Command Mission without going into this, the random battles. The battle system itself can wait, but holy fuck does it get shoved down your throat. Almost every 10 seconds there's a Christ, another one? It gets so annoying to be trying to get from one place to another and have to, Jesus Christ. Seriously, you cannot make it more than 30 seconds without having to be bothered with this bull fucking shit. I know it was only done for the sake of padding, since it makes this stuff that would take 5 minutes to do otherwise go by in about an hour and a half. Some of these battles you can escape, but some you can't. And I'll say it now. I like the battle system. But too much of a good thing is a bad thing in my opinion. And there it goes again. Look at Chapter 5 for example. There are these annoying ass conveyor belt sections to get through, and at the end of each is a battle that you have to face and waste sub-tanks on. And it drags on and on and on. It is ridiculous how stupid this is. With that said, what I just said now is no hyperbole. This makes what would take 5 minutes last an eternity. I would know since I went through this area having cleared the mandatory battles and it took me no time at all. That is a mark of clear padding. Especially in Chapter 7 where the laser redirecting stuff is bogged down by battle after battle after battle. And I hate that stupid transition. It looks so cheap, like the developers made that an iMovie or something. And I dread seeing it every time it comes up. The next 3 chapters are the same way, dragging the game's pace to a screeching halt every 2.5 seconds. I hear that the PS2 version has less random battles, but I can't confirm or deny since I don't own it, since from my research, that version is double the price, so I went with the GameCube version. Like I said in my X7 review, what god did I piss off in a previous life to deserve this shit? You know what else I don't like about this game? That would have to be the way you go back to base. This game has several save points in each area, and from there you can go back to base and refill your health and sub-tanks. Now from there, it should have been like 2005 Shadow the Hedgehog. In that game you could warp between different checkpoints you already reached, which didn't really come into much use in the Shadow game, but the idea is solid and really would have been right at home in this game with multiple save points in each area. But no, they opted against such a great idea. If you return to base, say before a boss, you can refill your sub-tanks since the game does a piss poor job of that since you have to waste your sub-tanks in these mandatory battles, then you have to backtrack through the entire area again. Random battles included. Who thought that was a good idea? Why am I being punished for trying to give myself an extra chance to survive these hellish bosses? But I'll get back to that later. I mean, as much as I'd love to rant about that all day, I think you clearly get the point just from what I said alone. It was a completely stupid oversight. Now let us finally get into the battle system itself. Your party starts with X but gradually grows in size, and when you get more than 3 members, you can swap any characters on any turn without any negative repercussions, which is nice. Some characters are better suited for different enemies, such as characters like X and Axel being better at dealing with enemies that are airborne than, say, Zero or Marino. The top right of the screen displays your attack, with Y and X being the starting attacks that take up weapon energy but can be turned into a 3-attack combo with A being the finishing attack. The bottom of the screen displays the turn order, which I never knew was a convenient feature until I saw someone else's review of this game, and I must say that it actually is really well done, since now you can strategize which enemies you're going to attack in what order, for your party to get as many turns in a row as possible, reducing the amount of damage you'll be taking by the end of it. Also displayed there is your party's health and weapon energy. When it's at 50% or more, you can do a special attack, which ranges from throwing cards as Spider, a charge shot from X, a barrage of saber slashes from Zero, or using Axel's copy shot to use boss attacks on the enemies. These I do enjoy using, especially when it delivers the final blow to a boss. Other things you can do will be use an item to deliver damage, recover fallen party members, and by the way, I hate the fact that you can waste a turn bringing a party member back from the dead and then they die immediately after. Heal virus statuses or regain your hyper mode abilities. Also, you can defend for a turn, which will increase the weapon energy meter on the next turn for that character. So next up will be hyper mode itself. Every character can use a stronger form for a few turns to deal extra damage. I'm just gonna say, the design of the fortified armor, which is X's hyper mode, looks really cool and is easily one of my favorite armor designs in the series. Although I wouldn't recommend spamming this in a regular battle though, since you're gonna want to wait to use this on bosses. Also, how about those boss fights though? The first 3 are okay, but starting with Dr. Psych is when I can't stand any of them. The reasons summed up being high damage, dying right after being revived, bosses taking over 10 minutes to beat, which regardless of other RPGs having longer bosses, doesn't mean that 10 minutes of this shit is not too long. Really, it just becomes a giant ass war of attrition that requires no skill. Hence why I bought a shit ton of items that do 1000 damage to make it go by quicker. This is the kind of stuff that turns me away from the genre. Like, am I not grinding enough? Well, I don't care, that's bad design. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the skill curve I'm familiar with is being given a set of tools and mastering them to make yourself better at the game. But if I have to grind for the game to arbitrarily decide that I'm now better at swapping through menus than I was before, well, I just take issue with that. I mean, seriously, I was on like level 35, full health, using hyper mode, and still Epsilon kills me in one hit? The battle with Dr. Psych being a huge example of this. And yet, just to change the tone of the review for just 1 second, I find the combat really captivating despite all these obnoxious flaws. I don't know why. I hate the random battle rate, I hate the exploration, but if I played this game for 20 hours total, clearly I saw something in it to the point where I wanted to finish it. I didn't want to finish Ratchet 5, so I didn't, and the same goes for any review on this channel. If I really don't want to play a game, I won't. I had enough to talk about around the 6th chapter mark, but I really wanted to see this adventure through to the end, since the moments where the battle system is really good are really great moments. Take the boss with Psych, for example. After days of trying to finish him off, I finally did. And how'd I do that? Well, once X's theme kicked in and the second phase began, I was gradually attacking him to expose the weak point to deliver the final blow, and I had the perfect chance, almost no health left, no sub-tanks, and I took the shot.
Here goes nothing!
My life's work!
See, that was satisfying. That is the kind of thing that keeps me playing this game. Although whoever thought giving an RPG a boss rush was a good idea should be slapped across the face. But with that said and done, my review of X Command Mission comes to a close. While there are a ton of things I really don't like about this game, such as the atrocious random battle rate, the awful map, the frustrating bosses, and the list goes on, there really was something that kept me coming back to it. Whether it be the entertaining story, the great new cast of characters that shows the series can do more than the villain of the week and Sigma comes back routine, the battle system has its high moments with some nice advantages to it, and satisfying feelings that come from beating a boss. Reasons such as this are why I can't and will not say that X Command Mission is a bad game. It really is far from it, as a matter of fact. The game, despite all of its glaring flaws, has certainly made me more open to trying some more popular RPGs out there and see what I think of them, since I think my attitude towards RPGs all this time has been misplaced. So in other words, I think X Command Mission stands on its own really well. And I'm glad I did this review, since without it, I may never have finished this game. Now, I said I wouldn't compare quality, and I won't, But how does X Command Mission fare in comparison to the rest of the series? Quite well, I'd say. X Command Mission, despite, like I said, being an incredibly flawed game that really could have used some ironing out, is definitely the breath of fresh air the series needed. I probably won't be replaying it too many times, hell, if at all, but this is definitely a more enjoyable experience than most of the games to have come out after X4. With that said, I hope you all enjoyed the review, and I'll see you next time.